Those who argue in favor of Issue 2 say its reforms are needed to bring government spending under control. But opponents say if it is not overturned by a no vote in November, it will remove collective bargaining rights from public employees.
All for one and one for all.
After September 11th in 2001, all police and firefighters were treated as heroes.
And 10 years later, do you know what's changed? Nothing. We still do our jobs, only now the governor and his coward friends, they treat us as the enemy.
It's not some personal attack on them or a personal attack on their union or anything else. This is all about trying to get the state in the right position.
A trickle turned into a flood in Columbus as thousands of state employees protest a Senate proposal to end their collective bargaining and replace negotiated salary schedules with merit raises.
State workers took a 2-week without pay, and they've lost all their personal days. They're bashing all the wrong people.
Senator Joe Schiavone is on the committee hearing testimony to the bill. He opposes eliminating collective bargaining.
A lot of the management, they talk about, we're going to the table with one hand tied behind our back, but if this passes, public employees will have both hands tied behind their back.
Protesters filled a rotunda and spilled outside, listening to the testimony through speakers. Charter buses came in from all across the state this morning, dropping off union protesters. But there were also several pockets of SB5 supporters, and at times it got heated. Supporters and Tea Party members protested the cost of unions.
I'm concerned about the state of Ohio and the fact that we're not taking in enough money to cover these promises that the unions.
But union workers and the lawmakers who support them say eliminating bargaining power won't save the state money.
They have a budget problem here in Columbus, but you're not going to solve that by laying off firefighters in Warren or by cutting the health care benefits of school bus drivers in the city of Youngstown.
There are some states, for example, like Arizona, that don't have collective bargaining, that have much larger budget deficits than the state of Ohio.
Many state workers say the only savings would come from devastating layoffs.
If you start taking more people out of work, that's less money spent in the communities. It's less that could thrive. This isn't about saving money. This is just about a power control.
Ohio public unions have had collective bargaining since 1983.
In the 80s, before we had this road, there was public service strikes, public safety strikes, and none of us, this administration don't want it, the citizen doesn't want it, and we don't want it.
It's now up to the subcommittee's vote if SB5 will make it to the Senate floor. With more local news, I'm Sally Phillips.
Yes, I want in. Let us in. This is our house. Let us in.
Thousands brave the cold and travel from every corner of Ohio to the State House in Columbus, wanting to exercise their rights to free speech and to peacefully protest. But imagine their surprise when the State House doors were locked and thousands were told they could not come in. Even United Auto Workers from GM Lordstown and hundreds of others from the Valley were forced to protest outside for a time. State lawmakers feel it was a deliberate effort to silence the people's voices.
I'm totally outraged that the leaders in the State House took this action against the people of the state of Ohio.
Troopers from the State Highway Patrol were just following orders and were told they could not exceed more than 700 people in the building for safety reasons.
I think what they're going to try and do is keep people outside until they're cold and miserable and leave. It seems like those people who are opposed to the bill are getting unfair treatment.
Then State Representative Bob Hagan and a contingent of other lawmakers demanded that at least 500 more be allowed in the building and refused to take no for an answer.
Now listen, the troopers are just following their orders. So do not make problems for the state troopers.
They know we're fighting for them as well, and we have negotiated to bring 500 into the rotunda. So please do it in an orderly fashion, and we have decided that this house is the taxpayers' house.
People in this building. They say this is the people's house and everyone should have been let in the first place.
Even former Governor Ted Strickland calls what's happening with state government an injustice for the working class.
Now we've got a governor who was on Wall Street and walked away with a $400,000 bonus, when Lehman Brothers went bankrupt. And yet he seems to think that public employees are getting too much when they get a meager pension after years and years and years of hard work.
Thousands standing up for what they believe say they just want to be heard. With more local news, I'm Michelle Nix.
Opponents of SB5 feel that the only reason the governor and the Republicans want to talk compromise now is because their petition drive has spoken so loudly. The We Are Ohio committee says it is standing firm with the 1.3 million Ohioans who signed petitions against Senate Bill 5. The committee says it will only consider negotiating a deal with the governor after the bill is repealed. Vindicator political columnist Bertram D'Souza feels the unions are now in the driver's seat.
What they said to the Republicans as of last night and this morning is fine, we'll come to the bargaining table. However, we want the Republican majority, the Republican-led legislature, to completely repeal Senate Bill 5 first. Get it out off the books, completely repeal it, and then let's start from square one.
The unions are saying that when they wanted their voices heard on SB 5 back in February, they were locked out by the Republicans in Kasich.
Right now, he's asking us to do what he's trying to take away, our ability to negotiate.
In a statement to its members and supporters, We Are Ohio says until they offer a full repeal of Senate Bill 5, we have to keep the pedal to the metal.
We don't think a compromise is in place. Our recommendation is, vote no on State Issue 2, and that'll take care of it because everything will be gone.
The polls have consistently shown that if the election were held today, if the referendum were held today, SB 5, Senate Bill 5, would be rejected.
We Are Ohio says that repealing the bill would set the table for meaningful negotiations. The deadline for any deal to get the referendum removed from the ballot is August 30th. With more local news, I'm Glenn Stevens.
There's been no way to silence the opposition when it comes to Governor John Kasich's decision to eliminate the practice of binding arbitration and limit collective bargaining for 350,000 public employees.
I like the governor personally, don't necessarily agree with all of the approaches that he's taken. Again, specifically with SB 5, I've said time and time again, he perhaps used a machete when he could have used a scalpel.
The Republican governor has also privatized economic development to the state in his first 100 days, a decision that's now being challenged in the Supreme Court. And then there's the budget. Balancing an $8 billion shortfall has meant schools, libraries, and local governments will have to do more with less.
He sent 16,000 infrastructure jobs to other states. He's put up a for sale sign on most of Ohio, including our prisons and our turnpike. He does not believe in transparency. He's run the state government in secret.
Certainly he's been one of the boldest and most controversial governors that we've seen in the last 30, 40 years in Ohio. He's done things in the first 100 days that many governors don't do in 4 years, but we don't know how it's all going to turn out.
Mahoning County's Republican Party chairman applauds what he calls the governor's courage, giving him an A+ in his first 100 days for fighting for change.
And it is so impressive to see a man like John Kasich, who's got the leadership and the courage to finally do some of the very difficult things that have to be done to fix Ohio.
The governor's approval rating is low at about 30%, but most agree only time will tell if his leadership takes Ohio in the right direction. With more local news, I'm Michelle Nix.
Fall in behind the colors, we're going to start walking down.
Hundreds of the Valley's public employees come together, some wearing their uniforms to remind you who they are and what they stand for, even though they all had to take a day off from work to fight for their jobs and the right of public employee unions to sit down and negotiate for their job security.
We just want to make sure that everyone understands that we are not the enemy, as we've been depicted.
The group marched from the Covelli Center to the center of downtown, ending up in front of the regional chamber's office to send a message to the president, Tom Humphreys.
The more that you take away from the middle class, the less that the businesses are going to have, because if we don't have the money to buy, we can't support them.
Now they hope the businesses they've supported will support local workers who plan to repeal Senate Bill 5 by a vote of the people at the ballot box.
Who do you think shops at these places? We do. Union workers, working people, we do. And I mean, we keep them going. We expect them to keep us going.
One group that received a labor award from the Chamber of Commerce now plans to return it.
Last year, he told us how important it was for labor and management to sit down and negotiate, and I was honored by that. I've lost that. And I think a lot of people feel the loss too, because again, hypocrite Humphreys, he's how can you honor labor and then attack them at the same time?
With more local news, I'm Michelle Nix.
They came, they protested, they testified, and now the Senate Insurance, Commerce, and Labor Committee will vote on whether or not Senate Bill 5 should go to the Senate floor. If it passes the Senate, it heads to the House, which will likely have its own hearing due to the divisiveness of the issue. If the House makes any changes, it must go back to the Senate for them to concur, and then it goes on to Governor Kasich, who backs the bill and even more stringent union limitations. Right now, Republicans have a 59-40 majority in the House and a 23-10 majority in the Senate, so the Republican-sponsored bill would need bipartisan opposition to block it.
There are Republicans that are opposed to this, it's my understanding. I don't know how many of them there are. You need 17 votes to either pass or block out of the 33 members of the Senate. So, I mean, only time will tell.
Obviously, we'll have our 10 that will be no votes. But as for the other members, they all have teachers, police, firefighters, public employees. They all have plenty of these in their districts.